Hey everyone, I'm excited to share with you today what you should do on a typical night shift. One of our most popular videos is about a typical postpartum doula shift, but I thought let's focus in on night shifts specifically. So we're going to cover a few different things here today. We're going to talk about what do you do when you first arrive, making sure that you have everything that you need. How do you keep baby quiet? Because it's nighttime and that's what everyone is kind of trying to do is sleep. So how do you do that? And also, what about your sleep? What do we do about that? All right, so let's dive in. All right, so when you first arrive at a night shift, one of the things you want to consider is what are you going to wear? And I've seen a lot of different doulas do a lot of different things on this front. I've seen doulas show up in PJs, to doulas showing up dressed super professional, to comfortable casual. What should you do? Well, obviously, this is going to be something that's on brand for you, but I just want to throw out there that we're actually working, and so maybe we shouldn't be wearing pajamas. I don't know. I like to wear something comfy on my bottoms. And so maybe that's a nice pair of leggings or slacks that are like kind of comfy and stretchy. And then our team likes to wear a logoed shirt. So they're super comfy shirts, but they show our logo. And so it still gives that comfortable slash professional. So that's in terms of what we should be wearing. What you also want to think about is what you bring with you. If the house is a bit chilly, you might want to bring a blanket, or you might have a little pillow that you like to bring for yourself. I don't encourage doulas to bring like a full sleeping setup. I just feel like it's giving the wrong image or impression of what our goal is for the evening. But I do bring myself a little bag with snacks and any beverages that I might want, a meal for myself, as well as a blanket that folds up nice and easily and a small little pillow. So that way I know I have something to help adjust me depending on where I'm sitting or lying, to adjust myself for comfort a little bit more. Okay, now most importantly is what do we do when we first get there? Number one is I recommend showing up a few minutes early. We don't want to cut it close and have the parents sitting there wondering, oh no, is my doula showing up today? And I'll tell you, I've worked in this business a really long time, and a lot of clients have hired me because their other doula wasn't reliable. So first of all, being reliable with overnight work especially is so critical. We have to understand that these parents are sometimes hanging on by a thread, and knowing that we're showing up that night is the one thing that's keeping them going, that they have to look forward to a few hours where they're not going to be the primary person responsible for their baby. And so I want to make sure that I show up a few minutes early. There's never any doubt or worry. And if ever there's traffic or something going on, that I've given myself a little buffer. I know a lot of people think, oh, it's no big deal. I'm just going to text them and tell them I'm going to be 10, 15 minutes late. But I think that is a big deal. Just be on time. Barring a super crazy duper extenuating circumstance, just be there on time. Right. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to do a little debrief with my client. So I like to check in for a few minutes. And sometimes they're really tired and it's going to be a quick check in. But I certainly don't want it to be baby handoff or baby's in the room, okay, good night. Hey, how are you feeling? What's been going on? Tell me about the day today. It's really important for us to know what's been happening with this baby's day. Has the baby had a bad day or a good day? Has the baby slept a lot or a little? How has the baby been eating? What's the output been? Is there anything else we need to know? Maybe there were vaccinations that happened or a circumcision that happened. Like, these are really, really important things. And so giving ourselves this deliberate space for a check-in is going to help clarify all of those things. And then that way, we're not going to be sitting there at 2 a.m. with a fussy baby going, what the heck is going on? When really there was an answer that we could have gotten out of a 5 or 10 minute check-in. And finally, the last thing that I want to know is, do I have everything I'm going to need? Are there any things that I might need to ask for from these parents before they head to sleep? Do I have enough clean clothes for the baby? Do I have change of clothes? Do I have extra swaddles if the baby's being swaddled? Do I know where the pacifiers are? You know how many times I've showed up at a shift and I haven't asked those important questions, and the baby's crying, and I know this is a baby that takes a pacifier, and the room is dark and I can't find the pacifier anywhere. If I would have just known where these important things were, it would have solved a lot of heartache for me. So you really kind of need to think through, and maybe you have a physical checklist that you use if you're a new doula. And if you're an experienced doula, then you probably have a mental checklist that you're kind of checking through and like, oh, how about this? How about this? How about this? Hey, is there anything that you'd like me to do tonight? Are there bottles that are made up? Are the bottles cleaned? Are they sterilized? What do I need to do to start this shift, right? All of this can happen in less than 10 minutes, depending on what's going on. But it's just an important thing to make sure that we're ready heading into the evening. The next big thing that I do, some of this is going to happen in that conversation or check in with the parents, and some of it's going to happen after they go to bed, but before, as I'm getting myself situated for the evening. The question is, do I have everything that I need? And so I'm really going to think, hey, does the baby have clean swaddles and onesies? Do I know where they are? Are they accessible to me? What about pacifiers? What's the bottle situation if the baby's a bottle fed baby? Are the bottles already made? Do I need to make some? Do I need to sterilize some? Are there dishes in the sink that I could tidy up if the baby's sleeping? Um, all of these things that we're going to need. What's the warming situation for the bottles? Is that ready to go? There's so many things you can do that are going to make the whole rest of your shift easier if you know what the status is before you begin. The worst thing is for us to wait until the baby's crying for the first time because they're hungry. And now we're like, oh, shoot, there isn't a bottle made. And then the parent gets up and they're like, oh, why is the baby crying? And you're just like, oh, I'm just making a bottle. No, you should have had that ready before. You shouldn't be waiting for the baby to be crying to see what's going on in terms of bottle situation or formula preparation, right? That should be done in advance. And almost all situations where we're doing those kinds of night shift with a bottle fed baby can be prepared in advance. All right, so the next thing we want to think about is how do I keep this baby or these babies as quiet as possible? And I'll tell you that that was one of my goals. These people are hiring me so that they can get a good night's sleep. And so part of that is minimizing noise. That's one of the reasons when someone hires me to do overnight work, I tell them I'm probably not going to be doing cooking and cleaning in the middle of the night. If it's a really big house and the laundry room is somewhere really separate from the rest of the living environment or sleeping environment, then yes, you might be able to do a load of laundry of baby clothes or something like that. But I typically don't get into a lot of other things because the goal here is recovery and well-being. And for parents to get that recovery and well-being, they need to sleep well. And no one's sleeping well if there's a bunch of noise happening. And so my goal was always, how can I keep babies as quiet as possible? And of course, one of the things I use is Harvey Karp's 5S's, right? I love it to this day. It's one of really the most transformative things that I did as a postpartum doula was to learn these skills and to really refine them. And it's pretty rare for me to have a baby crying that I can't soothe or console. And actually, I typically do a lot of things to prevent a baby from crying. So looking at those early warning signals and those early cues for what the baby might need, and trying to get ahead of it, right? So coming up with strategies for how to do this. So what are some of those strategies? So I think one of the first things that we want to really recognize and name is the fact that a baby's natural habitat is a chest. And so for the first 6 or 7 weeks of a baby's life, babies want to be held a lot. I set really clear expectations with parents that the truth is there's very little that we're doing that's going to um, change a baby's sleep patterns in those first few weeks. We can do things that make it a little bit better and that optimize healthy sleep habits. But there's nothing that we're going to do that's going to stop a baby from crying if they really need to be held or from crying if they need to be fed. That's just not what a baby is able to do in that developmental phase of the first 6 or 7 weeks. So yes, we want to make sure that the room is dark and that it's the right temperature and that the baby's getting good sleep cycling through the day because daytime affects nighttime and then nighttime will affect daytime, right? So when someone says, I want my baby to sleep well at night, so I kept them up as much as I could during the day, we know that that is the wrong thing to do. We know that those sleep cycles are really important, and a cranky baby gets more cranky. A baby that's not sleeping well during the day typically doesn't sleep well at night, and it's really hard to reestablish that pattern. So I set the expectation that I'm going to hold baby a lot in the first 6 or 7 weeks. After that time, and depending on the baby's personality, I will start to do things that will incrementally and very, very slowly get an increase, more sleep, better sleep, longer sleep cycling. And I've had a lot of really amazing success with that. Now, I'm the first to say I am not a sleep consultant. I've been trained by sleep consultants and I figured out what works for me as a doula. That's a whole separate thing from this conversation. But what I want to just reaffirm is that those first 6 or 7 weeks, when a parent says, I don't want you holding the baby all night long, I would just set that expectation in my consultation that the first 6 or 7 weeks have very little impact on what a baby does the other nights of the week or how a baby sleeps overall. Okay. So, yes, have a white noise machine, keep a nice dark room, have the temperature good. Swaddling will help get extra sleep. I know that's controversial. Read the research, whatever. We're talking about what parents want us to do, not what we want to do, right? Those are the kinds of things that are going to get better sleep. But I'm going to do things that nurture a baby. And nurturing a baby is typically in its natural habitat, which is right here. And so I'm going to hold that baby a lot in those first 6 weeks. I'm being paid to snuggle a baby. So that's kind of amazing. I'm not worried about how much sleep I'm getting or not getting. My job for myself as a human is to make sure that I'm sleeping well the next day. My job that night is to nurture that newborn. But coming back to one of our other goals, which is keeping a baby quiet. How do I do that? Well, holding the baby is going to keep the baby more quiet, right? Babies sleep better on our chest. Also, we're going to start to notice when babies start to move around and they start to make those cues, like maybe they're starting to wake up. What I often do is I wear a wrap, right? Like a Moby wrap type of wrap, the big long ones. Those are great for newborns. It keeps the baby upright on my chest. The baby has good airflow, right? Which is important. I have my hair tied back. And what this also does is it allows me to now get the bottle ready without moving the baby. So if I have the baby snuggling with me in a wrap, then I'm starting to get a bottle ready. And before that baby is ready for the bottle, it's ready. Remember that a prepared bottle lasts quite a long time, actually, at room temperature before it needs to be discarded. And so if I get a bottle ready and warm it up, and then the baby falls asleep for another half an hour, that bottle is still good for me to feed in half an hour. So that doesn't really make a bottle go bad. What it does is that when that baby is ready, that now I'm able to feed that baby with a bottle that's literally right beside me and ready to go. What I often try to do if a baby is a pacifier type baby, then when I'm done the feed, I might put a pacifier in the mouth while I'm changing their bum. And then that way I'm helping to keep the nice, cozy, relaxed environment while I'm changing the diaper and the baby has something to soothe itself. I also try to make sure that the wipes aren't really cold. So I'm trying to do things that aren't jarring a baby when they're in that sleepy state. So can we warm up if they're not in a baby, obviously we know there are white warmers, but if they're not in that, is just like warming it up in your hands a little bit before you use it. Being really gentle and really quick with diaper change. You can get really, really fast with a good diaper change. It really minimizes the little window of opportunity for a baby to get fussy. If you do that really, really quickly, and part of that might be even the choice of onesie, right? We could actually see what's the onesie that changes the quickest and the most efficiently. And we could, or maybe we're using like a sleep sack or something even better. And we don't have to worry about completely undressing a baby. That could be something where you say, hey, what's really helpful at night is if you use one of these 5 onesies. These are great for nighttime changing. This is part of our job is we're here to help people learn about how to make life easier with a newborn, right? That's on us to know those things and to learn that. So, hey, maybe that's why you're here today learning more about it. What else can we do to keep a baby quiet? So the other thing is if I'm working with twins, I typically have one in that I'm wearing in a wrap. The other one I'm holding on to. You can also feed 2 babies at the same time. That's going to be another video that we'll share. Learning how to feed 2 babies at the same time, learning how to snuggle 2 babies at the same time safely. If you keep things really low to the ground, right? We do everything really low to the ground with twins. So that way, if ever we lose track of a baby a little bit or one wibbles out, that it's not that big of a deal, right? We're really close. We're in a carpet. We're surrounded by pillows, things like that. Obviously, our goal is to never drop a baby. But when we have 2 babies, sometimes it gets a little wiggly. I will Let the record show I've never dropped a baby before. Maybe my own, but definitely never any of my clients' babies. And so learning how to feed two babies at the same time. When we're feeding two babies at the same time, we're keeping both babies happy, because guess what happens if we're not comfortable with feeding two babies at the same time? One of them's feeding and the other one starts to cry because it's ready to feed. Having two bottles ready. If one baby is getting up to eat, the other one's going to be right behind it. Don't prepare one bottle for the one that woke up. Prepare two bottles, because you know that other one is right behind it, right? So it's just like really thinking logically is, what can I do that gets me so that I have everything ready that I might need? Wearing the baby, how we hold babies, snuggling babies, something where we can, like, rock and jiggle babies. Because often when babies start to show a little window of fussiness, we have time where we can keep them calm. So let's say you're in the middle of feeding one baby, right? What I often have done holding this baby is you can actually take the bottle with your chin, right? So you can hold the bottle with your chin, maybe if you have a long neck like me, because I have a really long neck. But if you can do that just to give yourself a window, and you can just like, gently jiggle the other baby for a few minutes, right? That might get it to go back to sleep if you're not ready to feed two babies at the same time. So just really thinking of like, what can I do in this situation that minimizes the amount of time or the amount that we wake up a baby, because then they're going to be tougher to get back to sleep or get back into that like snuggly, sleepy kind of space. Okay, and then finally, what about your sleep? What about doulas sleeping while they're on an overnight shift? Now, it's very, very common, and you've probably looked around the doula world and the Facebook groups, and you've seen that a lot of doulas actually charge extra for awake care, meaning they charge extra if a client wants them to be awake all night long. It's not tough to stay awake if you're a nurse in a busy ER, right? But it's kind of tough to stay awake when you're watching a baby in a dark room with a noise machine going, and it's the middle of the night and it's warm and cozy. That can be really tough to stay awake. So of course it makes sense that a lot of doulas prefer to have little cat naps. Now, here's the thing about sleeping when a baby's sleeping. It totally makes sense if you're a really light sleeper. It does not make sense if you fall into a deep sleep or if you're overtired. Then it doesn't make sense, because when that baby starts to make those early, warning signs that they're starting to wake up and ready for either some support or a feed, you are not going to catch it. You're only going to catch it when the baby is crying. That's a late cue, and the parents are also going to hear that. And so I just feel like that's inappropriate. And so you know yourself best. Can you be a light sleeper, and that you're sitting there and every time the baby makes a sound or starts moving around, that you kind of like one eye open and you look down to see what the baby is doing before dozing back off? It's your responsibility as a doula to make sure that you're getting appropriate sleep. It's not appropriate to be an overnight doula that then goes home and takes care of kids all day long and starts the process all over again and gets 2 hours of sleep a day. That's not appropriate. It's not healthy, and it's not safe for anyone. It's not safe for your children. It's not safe for you when you're driving. It's not safe for you to be taking care of somebody else's baby in that situation, right? So I think it's important that if we're that we not expect to be sleeping through the night. I see sometimes doulas post on Facebook, oh, I have this really fussy baby and I'm not getting any sleep. What do I do? And I think, I've never considered overnight sleep when I'm doing a shift as like a guarantee. For me, it's a bonus. If I get 2 or 3 hours in one night, I'm like, great. I actually can get away with sleeping less in the morning when I get home. But I don't expect it. Shouldn't be an expectation. It's not, I've never thought of it as an expectation for myself. It's just a bonus. And I really think we need to shift away from looking at it as an expectation, because we're being paid, and usually we're being paid really well, to take care of a baby. That is your primary responsibility. I also think it's really important that we set expectations with families in the consultation or in the signing process. If we're going to be catnapping, then I think it's important we explain that, because we've had a lot of clients over the years that have been frustrated or upset or want a refund when they say, well, I didn't see in the terms of service, I didn't notice that it said you're going to sleep. I don't want someone who's sleeping. That's why I hired you. That's reasonable for them to want someone who stays awake. But it's also reasonable for you to nap in a cold, comfy room, watching a baby in the dark. Like, that's also reasonable for you to catnap. So I think it's important. Most important thing is set expectations with your clients and set expectations for yourself personally and professionally of what works for you. And then finally, to wrap up our night shift, it's really important for us to make sure that we've tidied up the kitchen, we've washed all of the bottles that we've used, and sterilized them. Maybe if they're people who prepare their formula, that we've prepared formula for them for the next few hours or the day. Um, and it's also really important for us to send a few notes to the client. Maybe you use some kind of a doula app. Maybe you're writing it down in a little booklet or some forms that they have for you there, or maybe you just send people a text. If you're a doula that works in a doula team, I strongly recommend that everyone just share an update with the rest of their team and say, hey, here's how my night went with, baby Sarah, and this is what's been going on this week or these last couple of shifts. That's really helpful to make sure that everyone's on the same page, everyone knows what's going on. And when we surpass that 6, 7 week mark and we're starting to do things to encourage better sleep, that we're all doing the same thing. The truth is, when I did overnight work and I worked with clients long term, it was pretty rare for babies to not be sleeping through the night by the time they were 3, 4 months old. And it's just because I very, very, very slowly increased a baby's ability to kind of get back to sleep on its own, right? And we do this over many weeks and we do it very gently and slowly. And I am best known by my clients as someone who never lets a baby cry. They never hear their baby cry. And so I know that there are a lot of really amazing things that we can do that encourage good sleep and good sleep hygiene and good sleep habits and capacity. But those first 6, 7 weeks, just a reminder, that's not the time that we're going to shift and get a baby sleeping through the night. It's inappropriate probably for a baby that young to be sleeping through the night and skipping that many feeds. But of course, we can do things over time. So when we're working with another team, other team members, we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page there. We're also want to make sure that we're checking in with our clients. We're teaching them, once we get to learn a baby, we learn what is the best way that they soothe. What are the tips to get them to burp? What are the things that help them get back to sleep better? Because we see so many babies, more babies than the families we work with will ever have, we're so much more experienced. I can usually learn a baby in anywhere from 4 to 8 hours of working with a baby. I know all their tells. I know exactly what we need to do to get this baby to burp, to sleep, to how to change them best, how to feed them best. And so these are things that we could be sharing with the families to make life easier for them. At the same time, there are lots of different ways to wash dishes. There's lots of different ways to care for a baby, and we're all going to have our little tips and tricks and techniques for that. But I think part of this role is education. So following up our shift with a little bit of education, some tips and tricks, and what worked for us and how the baby did and what we're noticing and all of that good stuff is a nice way to end up our shift. I hope you found this helpful, and I would love to hear the things that I didn't think about mentioning in the comments. Please go ahead and post some ideas that you have. Good luck, everyone.